October 24th, 1944. 0847 hours. The waters east of Leyte Gulf, Philippines. Through the periscope of submarine I-56, Commander Teresa Komatsu witnessed a sight that would shatter the illusions carefully maintained by the Imperial Japanese Navy's high command. Stretching across the horizon from north to south as far as his optics could reach, sailed what appeared to be an impossible armada. He counted 30 vessels, then 50, then stopped counting altogether. Send an immediate flash transmission. To Combined Fleet Headquarters, Komatsu ordered, his voice barely steady. Enemy fleet sighted. Size. Unprecedented. Admiral Kurita must be informed at once. The radio operator hesitated. Sir, what numbers should I report? Komatsu pressed his eye back to the periscope, staring at the endless procession of gray hulls cutting through the Pacific swell. Tell them, he said quietly. Tell them we have awakened a sleeping dragon, and we are about to discover what it means when America brings its full industrial might to war. What Japanese naval commanders were about to learn would forever alter their understanding of modern industrial warfare and how catastrophically they had misjudged their enemy's capabilities. The message from I-56 reached Admiral Takeo Kurita's flagship, the heavy cruiser Atago, at 0912 hours on October 24, 1944. Kurita, commanding the center force of the Imperial Japanese Navy's Show 1 operation, read the decoded transmission. 3 times before summoning his chief of staff, Rear Admiral Tameji Koyanagi. This cannot be accurate, Kurita said, sliding the message across the chart table. Komatsu reports observing more than 100 American vessels in a single formation. Our intelligence places total American strength in the Philippines at 40 capital ships, maximum. Koyanagi studied the message, his expression darkening. Perhaps the submarine commander has counted escort vessels, sir. Destroyers, destroyer escorts. He specifically identifies 6 fleet carriers, Kurita interrupted. 6? Koyanagi! We sank 4 American fleet carriers at the Philippine Sea engagement 3 months ago. How can they now field 6 carriers, plus battleships, cruisers, and supporting vessels numbering in the dozens? The answer, had Kurita known it, lay in American shipyards, an industrial force that Japanese naval intelligence had failed to comprehend. While Japan's naval construction had effectively ceased after 1942 due to material shortages, American shipyards had accelerated production to levels that defied economic logic. At 11:45 hours, Kurita received confirmation from 3 additional submarines. Each reported massive American fleet concentrations. I-45 counted 18 carriers, a number Kurita initially dismissed as impossible. I-58 reported 12 battleships. I-54 transmitted simply, American fleet strength exceeds all previous estimates by a factor of 3 or more. Beneath Tokyo's Navy Ministry, in the Underground Command Center, Admiral Soemu Toyota, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, convened an emergency conference at 1400 hours. Present were Vice Admiral Shigeru Fukudome, Chief of Staff, and Rear Admiral Sokichi Takagi, the Navy's senior operations analyst. Gentlemen, Toyota began, spreading reconnaissance reports across the table, we are receiving information that contradicts every intelligence assessment we've made since 1942. Either our submarine commanders have simultaneously lost their ability to count, or we have been fundamentally wrong about American naval construction. Takagi, who had spent 18 months analyzing American industrial output, spoke carefully. Admiral, I've been warning since 1943 that our intelligence estimates were dangerously optimistic. American shipyards are operating on a scale we cannot even imagine. They are not building ships the way we build ships. They are manufacturing them like automobiles. Mass production, assembly line efficiency, we cannot match it. Fukudome frowned. The Americans lost 4 carriers at the Philippine Sea. We confirmed those sinkings. And they've already replaced them, Takagi replied flatly. Essex-class carriers are being commissioned at a rate of 1 per month. Independence-class light carriers even faster. While we struggle to repair, the Shokaku and Zukaku, the Americans are launching new carriers every 30 days. Toyota stood silent for a long moment, staring at the intelligence summaries. The numbers told a story Japanese naval doctrine had no answer for. In December 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy had possessed 10 carriers. The United States Navy had 7. By October 1944, Japan had 4 operational carriers remaining, 2 of which, Zuikaku and Zuiho, were so critically short of trained pilots they functioned primarily as decoys rather than combat vessels. The Americans, according to the latest submarine reports, were operating more than 30 carriers of various classes in the Pacific alone, and they maintained a complete Atlantic fleet that exceeded Japan's entire naval order of battle. How? Toyota asked quietly. How did we miscalculate so badly? Takagi opened a folder he had compiled over months of analysis. Admiral, American industrial production in 1943 exceeded our total output for the entire war to date. In 1944, they surpassed that again. They are building Liberty ships, cargo vessels, faster than we can sink them, 1 every 4 days from a single shipyard complex. And they have dozens of such complexes. He spread photographs obtained from neutral sources, images of American shipyards published in international maritime journals, Bethlehem Steel's Four River Shipyard in Massachusetts, Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia, Mare Island Naval Shipyard in California. Each photograph showed multiple capital ships under simultaneous construction. We built Yamato over 4 years using the combined resources of our finest shipyard, Takagi continued. The Americans built USS New Jersey in 18 months and launched 5 sister ships in the same period. While we concentrated on 2 super battleships, they mass-produced 24 modern battleships, dozens of carriers, hundreds of destroyers, and thousands of support vessels. Fukudome's face had gone pale. Then the Show 1 operation is sailing into a numerical disadvantage we cannot overcome through tactical brilliance or warrior spirit. Exactly, Takagi replied. Admiral Kurita will face not 40 American ships, but potentially more than 200. Every intelligence estimate we based this operation on was catastrophically wrong. Toyota sat down heavily, the weight of realization evident in his posture. Then we have already lost this war. We lost it the moment we failed to understand what American industrial capacity truly meant. Outside the conference room, staff officers continued planning operations, unaware that their assumptions were about to collide with a reality that would shatter the Imperial Japanese Navy forever. October 25, 1944, Aero 6:30 hours. Admiral Kurita's center force entered the Sibuyan Sea, committed to breaking through the Philippine Islands, to reach the American landing forces at Leyte Gulf. What followed over the next 8 hours would deliver a devastating education in American naval aviation power. At 08:10 hours, radar operators aboard Kurita's flagship detected the first incoming aircraft formations. The initial count, 48 planes, a standard carrier strike package, the kind Japanese forces had faced dozens of times before. All ships, air defense stations, Kurita ordered. Fighter Combat Air Patrol Intercept bearing 090. But something was different this time. The radar screens showed the incoming formation, and behind it more blips appearing at regular intervals, then more, and more. Lieutenant Commander Otani Tenisuke, the fleet's air defense coordinator, stared at his radar in disbelief. Sir, I'm tracking multiple formations, 5 separate strike groups, each numbering 40 to 50 aircraft. That's impossible, Rear Admiral Koyanagi replied. No carrier task force can launch that many planes simultaneously. They would need multiple carrier groups. Otani's voice was quiet. Sir, we're not facing one American task force. We're facing several. The first strike arrived at 08:27 hours. TBF Avenger torpedo bombers swept in low across the water, while SB-2C Helldiver dive bombers attacked from above. F-6F Hellcats strafed anti-aircraft positions. The coordination was flawless, the execution relentless, the volume overwhelming. Battleship Musashi, sister ship to the legendary Yamato and considered unsinkable, took her first bomb hit at 08:35 hours. Then a torpedo, then another bomb, then 3 more torpedoes in rapid succession. Kurita watched from Atago's bridge as Musashi's anti-aircraft guns blazed furiously, downing multiple American planes. But for every aircraft destroyed, 5 more pressed their attack. The sky itself seemed to produce an unending storm of steel. Second wave incoming, Otani reported at 0945 hours. Radar shows 50-plus contacts bearing 115. Before that strike even arrived, a third wave appeared on radar, then a fourth. American carrier aircraft were arriving in continuous relays, giving Japanese ships no respite, no chance for repairs, no room to breathe. Aboard heavy cruiser Maya, Captain Rengi Oye recorded grimly in his log, "We are being attacked by what appears to be an endless supply of enemy aircraft. Our anti-aircraft ammunition is depleting faster than it can be resupplied. If this continues, we will soon be defenseless, not from lack of guns, but from lack of shells." The mathematics that had guided Japanese strategy for 3 years were failing catastrophically. Their doctrine assumed carrier air groups could launch 2 major strikes per day, requiring rest, rearming, and repairs between. The Americans operated by different rules entirely, launching continuous strikes, rotating squadrons, maintaining unbroken pressure. Japanese calculations had assumed parity in sortie rates. They were wrong. At 11:34 hours, Musashi took her 19th torpedo hit. The massive battleship, displacing 73,000 tons and protected by 16-inch armor belts, was now visibly listing. Her speed had dropped from 27 knots to less than 12. "How many carriers are attacking us?" Kurita demanded. "Intercepts suggest strike aircraft from at least 12 carriers, sir," reported Lieutenant Shimada. "Task groups 38.2, 38.3, and 38.4. 12 carriers," Koyanagi repeated slowly. "That's more than we've possessed for the entire war." At 13:15 hours, Kurita made a fateful decision that historians would debate for decades. He ordered Center Force to reverse course, retreating westward to escape the annihilating waves of American aircraft. His after-action report to Admiral Toyota read simply, "Enemy air power vastly exceeds all intelligence estimates. Sustained attacks from dawn to present. Own forces have expended 70% of anti-aircraft ammunition. Musashi heavily damaged and sinking. Heavy cruiser Myoko crippled. Without fighter cover, penetration to Leyte Gulf will result in destruction of entire force." In Tokyo, Admiral Toyota read Kurita's message at 15:30 hours and summoned Rear Admiral Takagi once again. "Your assessment?" he asked. Takagi's expression was grim. "Admiral, we are receiving similar reports from every theater. American carrier strength now exceeds 100 aircraft per vessel, double ours. Their ability to sustain operations surpasses us by factors we cannot match. Most critically, they possess the ships, planes, pilots, fuel, and munitions to conduct such operations simultaneously across thousands of miles." He paused. "Sir, we calculated that American industrial production was double or triple our own. We were wrong. It's not double or triple. It's 10 times greater, perhaps more. They're not just outproducing us. They're operating on a scale that makes our entire war effort insignificant." Toyota turned to the window overlooking Tokyo, a city already scarred by bombing raids. "Then Admiral Yamamoto was correct," he said softly. "We did awaken a sleeping giant, and we are only now discovering what that truly means." By nightfall on October 25th, battleship Musashi had capsized and sunk, taking 1,023 officers and men with her. The vessel that embodied the pinnacle of Japanese naval engineering, heavily armed, armored, and feared, had been destroyed by American carrier aviation through sheer overwhelming force. Japanese commanders were learning a terrible truth. In industrial warfare, quality cannot overcome quantity when that quantity becomes absolute. And America's advantage wasn't just large, it was insurmountable. October 27th, 1944. The Battle of Leyte Gulf had ended, and with it, the Imperial Japanese Navy as an offensive force, but the true devastation was not measured in ships sunk or sailors lost. It was in something far greater, the complete collapse of belief among Japan's naval officers that they could still influence the outcome of the war. At 1100 hours, Vice Admiral Takajiro Onishi, commander of the 1st Air Fleet in the Philippines, summoned his staff officers to an extraordinary meeting at Mabalacat Airfield. What he proposed that day would become a symbol of both Japanese desperation and the brutal arithmetic of modern war. "Gentlemen," Onishi began, his voice carrying the weight of terrible certainty, "I have reviewed our combat losses from the past 3 days. Of 347 aircraft committed to operations against the American fleet, 289 have been lost. Our remaining strength, fewer than 60 operational fighters and bombers combined. The room fell silent as the scale of destruction sank in. In 3 days, the first air fleet had been annihilated. Yet the American fleet continued its operations with barely diminished strength. The Americans, Onishi continued, have lost perhaps 30 aircraft, and still they launch strikes with the same intensity as the first day. Why? Because they possess more aircraft than we can destroy, faster than we can destroy them. Every carrier we damage is replaced. Every plane we shoot down, every pilot we kill, replaced. We are fighting an enemy whose capacity to absorb losses exceeds our capacity to inflict them. Lieutenant Commander Nakajima Tadashi, one of the fleet's most experienced pilots, spoke hesitantly. Sir, are you suggesting we cannot win through conventional tactics? I am stating that conventional tactics have become irrelevant, Onishi replied. When the enemy possesses 10 times our numbers, when they can replace losses we cannot, skill and courage no longer matter. We need tactics that do not require returning pilots, that do not depend on maintaining aircraft, that maximize damage per sortie, regardless of survival. The officers understood. Onishi was proposing organized suicide attacks, transforming aircraft into guided missiles, pilots into living weapons. The kamikaze strategy was born, not from fanaticism, but from cold clinical logic. That afternoon in Tokyo, Admiral Toyota received Onishi's formal proposal at 1600 hours. The document was extraordinary, precise, dispassionate, terrifying in its logic. American carrier task forces now operate with such numerical superiority that conventional attacks cannot achieve decisive results. A standard torpedo, squadron of 9 aircraft might damage one vessel. The same 9 aircraft, employed as special attack units, could sink or cripple several. Given that pilot survival rates in conventional attacks have fallen below 15%, the sacrifice of return capability in exchange for increased effectiveness becomes strategically rational. Toyota read the proposal 3 times. The logic was unassailable, and that was what made it horrifying. Japanese. Naval aviation had reached the point where pilot death was now just another variable in the equation of combat. Efficiency at 1900 hours, Toyota met privately with Rear Admiral Takagi. Tell me honestly, Toyota asked. Is Onishi correct? Have we truly reached the point where this is our only option? Takagi's answer was careful but devastating. Admiral, the Americans currently operate approximately 90 carriers of various classes in the Pacific. They possess over 10,000 naval combat aircraft. We have 4 operational carriers, fewer than 200 qualified pilots, and no production capacity to replace losses. He spread the intelligence summaries across the table. Furthermore, American defenses have evolved. Radar picket destroyers now provide early warning. Carrier formations maintain continuous combat air patrols. Their anti-aircraft fire control has improved dramatically. A conventional attack must now pass through multiple defensive layers, each capable of destroying significant portions of our force before reaching the target. And the special attack units? Toyota asked quietly. A single aircraft diving at high speed is difficult to stop, Takagi replied. Even if damaged, momentum may still carry it to the target. The mathematics favor the attacker in ways conventional tactics no longer do. It was the rational response to overwhelming disadvantage. The next day, October 28, 1944, the Imperial Navy issued the formal authorization for organized special attack operations. The order's preamble, written by Admiral Toyota himself, was brutally honest. The enemy's material superiority has reached levels that render conventional tactics ineffective. Standard. Attacks yield unacceptable losses with negligible results. Special attack operations represent a tactical adaptation to numerical realities we cannot otherwise overcome. On October 29th, the first official kamikaze units lifted off from Philippine airfields. 24 pilots departed, knowing they would not return. 13 reached American formations. 5 struck their targets, sinking the escort carrier St. Lo and damaging 3 others. On paper, the exchange ratio seemed to favor Japan. 5 ships hit for 24 aircraft lost, but the calculation ignored the brutal truth. Japan was trading its last trained pilots for damage to a fleet that America could repair and replace within months. At Mabalacat Airfield, Flight Operations Officer Lieutenant Yonoko Fumihiro recorded in his diary, We send these men to die because we cannot afford to send them to fight and return. The Americans have forced us to this by making survival itself a luxury we can no longer sustain. This is what defeat looks like, not at surrender, but at the moment when survival ceases to be a tactical consideration. In Washington, D.C., American naval intelligence studied the reports with a grim understanding. Enemy employment of suicide attacks represents not fanaticism, but rational adaptation to resource constraints, one summary read. They have calculated that we can absorb their conventional attacks indefinitely. This new method reflects their recognition of inevitable defeat and their intent to maximize casualties before it arrives. Over the following months, the kamikaze campaign would sink or damage hundreds of American vessels, but it would not alter the war's outcome. For every ship struck, American shipyards launched replacements. For every pilot lost, new ones graduated from training programs across the United States. The Japanese had uncovered the cruelest truth of modern warfare, that even death, weaponized on an industrial scale, could not defeat an enemy whose production capacity exceeded your entire national economy. November 15, 1944. The Japanese Naval General Staff compiled what they called the Assessment of Material Reality, a classified document, the Navy's final honest evaluation of its position. Rear Admiral Takagi, who authored it, began with words that months earlier would have been treason. The Imperial Japanese Navy has been defeated not through tactical failure or lack of spirit, but through fundamental miscalculation of the enemy's industrial capacity and our inability to wage sustained industrial warfare. The report dismantled every strategic assumption that had guided Japan's planning since 1941. Section 1. Carrier Aviation. As of November 1944, the United States Navy operated approximately 90 carriers of all classes. Japan possessed 4, 2 of them without sufficient aircraft or trained pilots. American monthly aircraft production exceeded $3,000 units. Japan's barely 400, declining in quality due to shortages and the drafting of skilled workers into the Army. Section 2. Pilot Training. American programs graduated around 2,000 qualified naval aviators monthly, each averaging 600 training hours. Japanese trainees received barely 200, too few to survive against experienced American pilots. The result, a self-reinforcing spiral of declining effectiveness. Section 3. Shipbuilding Capacity. In 1944 alone, American shipyards had commissioned 9 fleet carriers, 22 escort carriers, 4 battleships, 7 heavy cruisers, 13 light cruisers, and over 200 destroyers and escorts. Japan had commissioned none of comparable scale, only 2 light cruisers and 47 smaller vessels. And while American production accelerated, Japan's declined under the weight of shortages and bombing. On November 20th, Admiral Toyota convened a final conference with the Navy, General Staff, and representatives of the Supreme War Council. He opened with a chart, the visual summary of Japan's downfall. "Gentlemen," he began, "we must confront facts without illusion." On December 7, 1941, Japan had struck Pearl Harbor from a position of near parity. They had held advantages in torpedo warfare, night combat, and carrier aviation. They believed these strengths, combined with fighting spirit, would deliver decisive victories before American industry could mobilize. He paused. 3 years later, Toyota said, "The Americans now operate more ships in the Pacific than we possessed at the war's beginning. They have not merely replaced losses, they have built entire new fleets while repairing the old. Our qualitative advantages are gone." Lieutenant General Yashijiro Umezu from the Army General Staff interjected, "Surely our ground fortifications across the Pacific will be systematically destroyed," Toyota interrupted flatly. "The Americans face no shortage of ammunition. Their battleships fire thousands of shells for each assault. Their carriers provide continuous air support. They have unlimited fuel, munitions, spare parts, and medical supplies, all delivered by merchant fleets that exceed our entire Navy in tonnage." He showed reconnaissance photos of Ulithi Atoll and Majuro Island, massive American forward bases, built from nothing within months, They can wage continuous operations from these bases indefinitely, Toyota said, while our own fleets struggle to maintain supply even in home waters. Captain Oy presented updated intelligence. American shipyards will produce over 100 merchant vessels this year, totaling 10 million tons. Our submarines have sunk only about 200, less than 2% of their construction rate. We cannot sink ships faster than they build them. We cannot destroy supplies faster than they produce them. We cannot kill faster than they replace. In the silence that followed, Toyota spoke the truth none wished to hear. Gentlemen, we are not losing because we lack courage or skill. We are losing because we challenged an industrial power whose capacity exceeds our own by orders of magnitude. Every battle we fight, every ship we lose, every pilot killed, these losses are final. For America, they are temporary. This is the reality of modern industrial warfare. Victory belongs not to the bravest, but to those who can build faster than their enemy can destroy. The conference adjourned with one grim recommendation. The Imperial Japanese Navy could no longer contest American naval supremacy. What began at Pearl Harbor, Japanese carriers striking American battleships, would end with the reverse. An American fleet so vast, so relentless, that Japan could only delay the inevitable. On November 25, 1944, Admiral Takagi wrote in his journal, "We saw the American fleet and finally understood what we had awakened, not simply ships and planes, but an industrial civilization that wages war as a production problem, solved with assembly lines and logistics. Against such an enemy, warrior spirit becomes meaningless. The war was lost. Before it began, we simply did not know it until we saw what America could build when fully committed to our destruction." The Japanese report would remain classified for decades, but its conclusions were already visible in the endless convoys of American ships advancing across the Pacific, in the skies darkened by carrier aircraft, and in the brutal mathematics of industrial war. They had seen the American Pacific Fleet, and in seeing it, they finally understood the magnitude of their miscalculation.